Psalm 53, attributed to David, is a sobering reflection on human depravity and the consequences of rejecting God. It closely mirrors Psalm 14, emphasizing the folly of atheism and the universal need for God's salvation. The fool's declaration, verse 1. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. David begins by highlighting the spiritual blindness of those who deny God's existence. This declaration isn't limited to intellectual disbelief. It's a rejection of God's authority and moral law. The result? Corruption and widespread wickedness. Corrupt are they and have done abominable iniquity. There is none that doeth good. God's assessment of humanity, verses 2-3. God is portrayed as looking down from heaven, searching for anyone who seeks him. God looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand, that did seek God. Verse 2. The conclusion is sobering. Every one of them is gone back. They are altogether become filthy. There is none that doeth good. No, not one. Verse 3. This universal statement reminds us that all humanity falls short of God's standard and is in desperate need of his grace. The foolishness of opposing God. Verses 4-5. David questions the wicked. Have the workers of iniquity no knowledge? Who eat up my people as they eat bread? They have not called upon God. Verse 4. The rejection of God leads to the mistreatment of others, particularly his people. Yet, in their arrogance, the wicked are gripped by sudden terror because they cannot escape God's justice. There were they in great fear, where no fear was. Verse 5. God is always with his righteous ones, and he will scatter and defeat the plans of the wicked, the hope of salvation. The psalm concludes with a cry for deliverance. Oh, that the salvation of Israel were come out of Zion. When God bringeth back the captivity of his people, Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. This verse is a prophetic longing for the ultimate salvation that God would bring through his Messiah. It reminds us that deliverance comes not from human efforts, but from God alone. Key themes. 1. The folly of denying God. Rejecting God leads to moral decay and spiritual blindness. 2. Universal sinfulness. Every person has fallen short of God's standards and needs his salvation. 3. God's justice. Though the wicked may seem powerful, God's judgment is certain. 4. Hope and salvation. God is the source of deliverance, bringing joy and restoration to his people. Psalm 53 invites us to examine our hearts and acknowledge our dependence on God. It reminds us that without him, we are lost. But through his grace, we have access to salvation and the joy of walking in his ways. As believers, we are called to trust in his justice and live as a testament to his transforming power. Take heart. God's salvation is always near, and his justice prevails over the plans of the wicked. Psalm 53 reminds us to place our hope in him, for he alone brings true joy and restoration. Rejoice in the knowledge that we serve a God who rescues and redeems. Return tomorrow as we dive into the next psalm, uncovering more of God's promises and faithfulness.